Today on the Uncomfortable Podcast, we have Saw.com domain broker Brooke Hernandez, who's been part of tens of millions of dollars in domain sales and has been in the domain industry for over 10 years. Listen to her story of making her way in the domain industry from domain advisors to Uniregistry to Saw.com. We cover the top objections brokers receive and how she responds to them. I don't need it. It's only nice to have. I'll just register a cheap domain and SEO the heck out of it. This is a good one, and I hope you enjoy it. Comments, requests, send us an email to buzz@saw.com and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major outlets. Thanks for listening. All right. Reporting live from the frozen tundra of Tampa, Florida. Today I give you broker Brooke Hernandez of Saw.com, domain broker, with over a decade of domain industry experience, tens of millions of dollars in transactions. Brooke is known for some of these sales: bunny.com, few.com, pin.com, anatomy.com, spill.com, and pasta.com. That's an old one, right, Brooke?
Oh,
and
reverse
cotton.com.
mortgages might even be older. Reverse mortgages, that's even older.
Mortgages, and what, cotton.com was another one you sold.
Way long ago.
Brooke has been stuck working with me for a majority of over that decade, through thick and thin and thin and thick. So, broker Brooke, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for aging me even further than I already feel by saying 10 plus years.
Yeah. So what I like to do with all of our... Go ahead.
Nope.
So what I like to do with all of our guests is hear a little bit about your background and how you got into the business. So why don't you fill everybody in a little bit of your experience and what you're doing before the domain industry and how it sucked you in.
So before I was a commercial real estate broker. I grew up in the commercial real estate world. My dad was a developer, was looking to hopefully, after I was 5 years of being a commercial real estate broker, I was going to try and be a developer. And then life took a hard turn and the 2008 market crashed. And I was talking to my dad, and it was right before I almost even got like a plot of property to do it. And he like looked me dead in the eye and he's like, you've got to figure something out because we don't know how long this is going to last. So at that point, we also owned, Craig and I, my husband, also owned a commercial real estate, a commercial landscaping company. So we thought we'd take a pause and go to Costa Rica, figure things out, came back to the U.S. and was introduced through a family friend, domain advisors. And that's when I met you and Tessa Holcomb, and that you were looking for someone to kind of go into sales. Even prior even getting to know you guys, I worked for a hot second as a aviation headset sales manager and was doing that, which which is really funny. Last week we had to go back to Arizona for a friend's funeral, and the boys got to go in the cockpit, and it was actually like I was able to talk to the pilot about their headsets, which was just a one-off, like, oh, I used to sell one of these. So it was just kind of funny. But yeah, and then I was introduced to the wonderful world of the domain industry, which has been a very fun and great business to be in so far. You say so far.
Do you remember when, to give some people some background, that Holcomb and I worked together at Cito for a number of years, and then Tessa left first and started her own thing, and then I ended up leaving, and we decided to start a business together with Greg McNair, and then Tessa brought Brooke in as a salesperson for us at Domain Advisors, and then I was helping to teach her, along with Tessa, about the business. And I used to call Brooke and say, remember I used to call you out of the blue and just be like, oh, hey, I'm ready to buy that domain. How about you tell me about the escrow process?
Yes,
So
the
for both of us,
tests.
yeah, so for both of us in sales, though, and I think we both agree, is that one of the most important parts is when you get that yes buyer is being able to make them feel comfortable with what happens next. So what happens next is one of the options is use a company like escrow.com or escrow.domains, and then going through the steps and the transfer process and those things, right? So I remember doing that with you quite
It was
often.
always, and you always, yeah, and you always seem to have called like the moment, because I've always worked from home, and you would always call like the one moment I decided that I wanted to catch like a breath of fresh air and walk around the block. So it was not even like I was able to be in like my sitting area and like all prepped in my office mode. It was like literally on the fly, because that's when we had also the round robin phones at times, so you didn't know who was calling when or what. But yeah, I remember that. It was very interesting. very it showed me how the industry is to say, just like on how everything's on the fly. Like I even remember at domain name sales when that was going up, and we had the app going, and like Vern called, and I was in San Francisco and I was supposed to test it, and it was just like, I got a deal though. I got a 5K deal sitting at a San Francisco baseball game, so can't complain about that.
But to give people a bit of a background, so we had Domain Advisors, which we ended up renaming to igloo.com. When Brooke was working there, one of our customers was Frank Schilling, and Frank put our main brokerage's phone number on all of the domain names that he had, all 360,000 of those domains. And so when people wanted a price, or if they were looking for a refund on their t-shirt they bought because they were confused, or adult-related people calling, or anything else under the sun, they would call our company and they would get somebody like Brooke. And that also was an app that we would communicate with Vern, who was Frank's right-hand man, or directly with Frank, where we could either look up quick pricing. So you could get an inbound lead, you pick up the phone and we got the price and we could give it to the buyer. And then you would negotiate with them right then and there, because we knew that would be okay if we could discount like 20 or 30% at our own discretion and sell the name. Or you were dealing with someone calling back and saying, all right, I thought about it, here's my offer, right? As well, plus all the other names that we had to sell. So, and mixed into that, I would call, and then Brooke would answer, and then I would pretend to be a buyer, and then have her explain to me different processes and things like that, which her and the other colleagues of hers got really tired of really fast. And
very fast.
Yeah.
And the objections, you would call in and you would ask, like, we'd say, oh, well, this is the price. And then you'd be like, oh, well, I don't know if I even want it. Blah. And then you would make all these, it was like, it was so, but honestly,
you guys didn't even know it was me
point,
with my
I
voices.
didn't even know. No, I had no idea it was you, because I really, from working with you, I think it was the first time I went to one of the conferences, which was in California. Where was
Fremont Hotel? I remember.
Yeah,
it was when
that was the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could have completely continued that, and I would have never have known. But
you'll have to try it again.
Instant.
So from there, we worked together at Domain Advisors for a couple of years, and then the opportunity, because we were working on, so to give people a little bit more of a background, was we launched Domain Advisors. Frank was using our brokerage to sell his names. We were obviously attracting other customers, helping to do acquisitions or doing outbound sales on some real premium names. Reverse mortgages, one we mentioned before, was an outbound sale that you did yourself when we were together at Domain Advisors. It was Frank's. And then during that time, parking was going down. Frank was realizing that in order to maintain his revenue, he needed to start selling a lot more names. And so he started to build. He actually, I know for a fact, they tried to do a deal with Salesforce to use them to build a CRM, but the amount of money they would have charged to customize it, he said I could just build my own. So him, myself, Vern, and a guy named Roy, we worked together to start. And Dan Adamson was just starting to work there. We're talking about the perfect kind of CRM that we could build for his personal situation and potentially for others. And then I remember he launched Internet Traffic, which was just parking. So everyone started parking their names with him. And then he added on domain name sales, which we worked on building a CRM that was really just designed selling domain names, right? And based on inbound leads. And so then what ended up happening is we got to use the CRM as a sales team, right? Handle his leads. And then we started working with some of the parking clients that Frank had using that CRM. Then Frank was like, hey, you've done really good for me without Brooke knowing, you've done really good for me over at Domain Name Sales. Like, why don't you leave there and come in and join me and start really getting this brokerage going and really turning up the volume on my sales. So then we made an agreement. I left, stayed at Domain Advisors for a while, probably like 6 or 8 months or a year. I don't know. Later, I can't remember. No,
not that
5 minutes.
I don't know.
So a couple of months, and then you called me and you're like, hey, can I come and work for you at Uniregistry? Or wasn't even Uniregistry didn't even exist yet. It was Domain Name Sales at the time. And
no, it was Domain Name Sales. It was because we saw the writing on the wall that even though Frank had his domains at Domain Advisors, if you're seeing someone create a whole platform for exactly what you're doing and kind of all of a sudden building it up on a different level, you kind of are like, well, writing seems to be on the wall of what's going to happen with a client that, he was probably one of my main clients at Domain Advisors. I would do outbound on a lot of his domains and inbound and, work on it. We did portfolio sales at Domain Advisors, but he was my bread and butter, if that makes sense.
Well, I think the thing is that when you look at someone or any domain brokerage, is that it's great to make the big sales, but someone with a larger portfolio and does consistent sales is what really pays your salary, and then the bigger sales is kind of like the bonuses, and if you can make a couple of big sales over the course of a year, that can really change the outcome of your year. And then the smaller sales, the $3,000, the $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 deals, which Frank did a lot of, makes it so the math works when you kind of go through those slower times or when you're trying to work on the bigger names, right? And
it's also, I like to just, because I got to going to domain name sales. What was great is I got to actually get to know more of the people in the industry. Like, I knew some of the people, like a handful, which were, some of our repeats for portfolios, or, Gary Chernoff and, Scott Day, and those guys that you always had someone who's like, I want to buy this domain. Can you get it for me? And so you knew those guys, but it was really also great to see all of these other people that are out there that have great portfolios, but they're not, you don't know of them because they're not in the limelight. They're kind of just doing their own thing and want to kind of keep going that way. So.
Absolutely. So from there, you worked at Domain Name Sales, which then morphed into Uniregistry for what? I'd probably say 6 years would be my guess. I was there 7, so I was there a little longer than you, right?
Yeah.
So between, or maybe 7, because you lasted. So I resigned. I left Uniregistry, and then you stayed on for how long? Like, I left in August. And then
until December came, because I think it was after we found out that GoDaddy was going to purchase Uniregistry. And I think that was when I was like, okay, am I going to go, what's the next step? If I'm going to go work with GoDaddy, because I've been doing this. What am I going to do? And I think I took like December, if I recall, to just be like, okay, just let me have December and I'll figure out. And I even told Wade at that time, I was like, let me have December. I got to just kind of figure things out. And he was like, okay. So, and then
I think Wade had a
me.
feeling. I think Wade had a
Yeah.
feeling what was probably happening, because I remember the day that I told the company that I had given my notice and that I was leaving. I think right after the meeting, my phone was ringing and it was you saying, "Wherever you go, I'm coming with you." And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going. I don't even know if I'm even going to be in the business after this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but yeah, it was that was an interesting decision. And you joined us, the new
Yes.
company, right? And we go from this robust, built up, 6 years into a CRM system and hundreds of sellers and a registrar and domain extensions and all these plans of like going public and Christmas parties at the Ritz and boat rides and drinks and lightning in a bottle and lots of fun, to us with a very basic CRM, not a whole ton of clients, like really trying to get a business started. So why don't you tell us what that was kind of like for you, joining this?
Well, my personality is, I've always thought that if you want something to be successful, you have to put the work into it. So the one thing is, when I joined, I knew that we had two great people that were at the helm, you and then also Amanda Waltz. And
Yep.
I knew that at that time, we've got two people who came from, two, in a sense, different worlds within the industry, but had the same vision, which was, you kind of went the uniregistry way, and Amanda always had like her book of clients, of repeat clients, and her big sales that would take place. And so I always looked forward to being like, all right, I'm going to put in the work, I'm going to understand where this is going and help get that trajectory. After being at domain name sales, I really wanted to kind of change, because everyone in their industry, you work so many years and you kind of get into understanding how it goes. I also wanted to kind of expand and do more outbound and more acquisition for clients, because that was also something that we got to do at Uniregistry, but not on the level that really I piqued my interest on it. So then coming, it was like, all right, here we go, and jumped both feet in and had, normal home office. I was like, okay, let's start digging into who we're talking to, what we're selling, and, inbound leads were here and there. And then it was more like, all right, let's get, understanding what our exact mission statement's going to be for when we're talking to these companies, and how we're going to actually, what's the brand of our company? What's our portrayal? What are we? And that was fun. That was a really weird time, but it was a very fun time. And then It was a very short high that was lived, because then I think that's when, like 6 months later, maybe COVID hit. And that was like
3 months.
It was three. And that was one of those, oh crap moments. What did I do? And then, but it kept going. And that was the good thing, is it just, I think we had a good group of people and a good group of clients where it actually just kept rolling. And I think everyone was scared for a little bit, because we were just like, not knowing what any of it meant. But then who knew in a weird way that it would actually be more beneficial, because people started realizing, they needed that online presence for their companies. So it was a very weird time to go from a sure thing and then have this pandemic happen and then be like, okay, what's going on? So, but
yeah, and I think for me, in this business, and then like leaving, you're right. When we were both at Uniregistry, especially towards the end, the goal was, keeping all of the clients, and especially Frank, happy with really focusing on the inbound inquiries generated by the sales landers, and there were certain numbers and expectations that we're supposed to meet from hell or high water. And we still have clients that are sending us their inbound leads on a daily basis, and we want to expand that with our new product we're coming out with our new marketplace and our new sales
very
product.
Excited about that.
People can do their own self-brokerage very soon. I'm really excited about it too. But at the same time, be a lot more strategic and full with buyers, right? Or pitching names than we could before. I mean, I think one of the things with Uniregistry / domain name sales was you couldn't do outbound in that CRM. It just didn't exist. It just wasn't possible because if you try to do an email campaign, it's going to email the guy like he inquired. So it makes no sense. So there's that. You know, the other thing is putting in a buyer and a seller into a CRM. You know, a company comes to you and says, I want to buy this domain name. And then you have to follow up with the buyer and let them know what's happening with the acquisition. And is the seller responded, and what has he responded with, or what was the price, or if he's responded at all, or what you've done to try to contact the seller. And how do you put both a buyer and a seller into the Uniregistry or domain name sales platform? You couldn't, you know, it's just two different things, right? So we had able to start again with kind of a clean slate. Our CRM can do that, and we can do the outbound, and we can do the inbound stuff. So you're like a lot more nimble. And I think you said is that, you know, you're using kind of different parts of your brain rather than
that's exactly, I was just going to say that is, you know, when you're only doing inbound, your brain is just, you know, you start conditioning it to whenever someone comes in of what's going to happen, because it's more of a warm lead, right? You have someone who's someone interested in it. They're going to be a little easier in that sense. But it's fun to be able to have a client that wants to acquire a domain, and you're having to kind of do a little more digging on who the owner is and kind of work it that way. So I like having that balance because you're not getting bored. You know, it's not just a repetitive day. It's getting to have both and make it where I think it makes your mind a little sharper for when you do have that strong inbound lead. You're like, all right, like you kind of perk up. So instead of just click.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You have all the templates saved and you're just choosing 1 through 5 on every inbound lead in some cases when you just have so many and you don't know what to do.
Or the repeat conversation on the phone. That's the other thing. So you would have the repeat of someone who didn't know domains, and then you're just repeating. But what's funny is I do a lot of the domain acquisitions, and sometimes even with these, you know, startups and these companies that we're acquiring domains for, you kind of almost have that same conversation with them because they're still not as well versed in the industry as well. So I very much look forward to our new platform to be able to have that more fitting and bringing on more people, and then also being able to still do acquisitions, and then also, you know, be able to pitch some of our clients' domains if that one domain isn't going to work for that particular buyer, being able to know what we have as a resource and say, well, what about these? Would these be of interest? Because a lot of the acquisition ones, you know, they'll come in and they want a $100,000 domain. They don't have a $100,000 budget sometimes as a startup. So it's always good to have alternatives.
And I think one of the more, you know, it's becoming more and more challenging with the Whois being blocked. And we were talking about that yesterday, or the lights being shut on the Whois and having to go back and try to find a breadcrumb, right? And we've had situations where we've called ex-secretaries of domain owners or family members, finding them on Facebook and piecing it together. We've had a situation where we'd be sending letters to family members.
Certified letters, one of my faves.
I found a guy in the in the boonies of Alabama. We found his house. And we were looking at it on, you know, Google Maps. And it's like, we found you. and they're like, how
Now
the hell
he's
did
gonna
you
go
find
there.
me? Where the hell did that come from? Like, where the hell, whatever, trying to hide, but we find them. So yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of fun in internet sleuthing and things like that you can, get yourself into. I'm going to hit you with the most common objections, and let's see how you do, right? We're going to do it like old school, where I used to call you for the escrow.com process. So we're going to try a new one. I'm going to hit you with some.
Okay.
I'm not as versed as you, because I don't take as many inbound leads as you do these days. So some of my objections might not be as exciting anymore. Maybe you can add a few, but I don't need it. It's only a nice to have. What would you say if called into somebody who said it, or someone inquired directly to you and they say, I don't need it. It's just a nice to have. What would be your answer back?
Well, okay. So one is my sales style, because I know people will go about it in a different way, but my sales style is also kind of getting more information from them. So one, I'd be like, well, what makes this a nice to have? Like, what is it that they're looking for? Because some will say, oh, it's, personal product, a brand or company, and that kind of takes you on a whole different path. But for me, I'm always emphasizing with them that it's really establishing your strong brand for your company. So what is it that you're trying to get out of this? Are you looking to make a blog, or is this something where if it's your company, you're going to be established as a competitor in the market, your credibility is there, and even something like your SEO, where it makes a difference in having that kind of domain for what your company is. I think we talked about where, you have links that are going to be in your website, it's still going to come back. SEO uses age on a domain and things of that nature. So, I mean, I think you just go through and you kind of discuss what they're looking for, but also, inform them of the brand part, but also even marketing. Like if you go to trying to figure out what kind of marketing campaign are you going to do if you're going to be using this, like what is it going to be for? Because a marketing campaign with not that great of a domain and it's a nice to have doesn't make any sense. So I need to figure out which way they're going in order to really kind of pivot, because if it's someone that just, it's a nice to have, I'm going to do a blog, I'll throw them out some of the alternative extensions. If it's on a $50,000 domain, there's other extensions that might work better for that person. But if it's a large company that has the funds, it's going to be, let's talk about your brand, let's talk about your competitors that might come up, let's go that route. So it's an open-ended question, I guess I would say.
Yeah, so there's really no silver bullet to the answer, and I think the reality is right. You're uncovering, why is it a nice to have for them? What are the pain points they could be suffering through right now? What would this domain do to help alleviate problems? And trying to get them to say those on the phone, and then agreeing right with them, way that so they can see that it's not necessarily just a nice to have; it's a have to have, right?
Well, and one of the things that and one of the things, like when I first started out my sales career, my husband's stepfather, told me, he goes, you always want to try and see if you can get them to say yes, and you want to agree with them. And I've always thought that was the weirdest advice I've ever gotten, because I've always been like, no, my personality is like, I don't agree with you. This is why I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
But then really selling and seeing what he was meaning was that you're listening to their reasons and you're saying, okay, I get that. And that makes sense for your company. But have you thought of it this way? So it's, kind of moving it to, I get it. It's not a must because it's going to be a new product that's coming out. But have you thought that maybe a competitor's going to know that product's going to come out? And because of that, you're going to want to make sure that you secure this domain, or your competitor might grab it for their benefit instead. So, a lot of different ones.
Absolutely. I also think, and I've talked to you about this before, is is the business a B2B, right? If it's a B2B product that you're expecting to do TV ads and really pump the general public who aren't as well versed in domains, having a confusing domain is going to hurt you a lot of ways, right? And you're relying on repeat customers, repeat traffic. Like if a company,
You mean B2C then? You said B2B.
B2C, not B2B. I'm sorry, B2C.
Yes, B2C.
Right, like for example, I don't know if you know the story of Amazon, but Amazon was initially called Abacadabra or Cadabra, and the lawyer kept calling it Cadaver. And so if you go to cadaver.com or cadabra.com, and I think even cadaver.com, it goes to Amazon. They forward to Amazon. But that was the original name of Amazon was Cadabra. And so they realized right then from the beginning that that wasn't a good name for repeat business in a B2C style of name. So they switched to Amazon, right? And obviously we know how they did with that. But like there's other situations where you do talk to a B2B business, right? And it could be like, you know, we were saying
a giant company across the world that only deals with specific containers from, I mean, you know, a niche B2B is, you know, hard to say you gotta have this. I think I talked to one business and they literally are a company that only works with the US government. That was it.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
What am I going to say?
I mean, I also think there's a vanity play for it, right? Because there's certain VCs that we've worked with that we've acquired their brand match domain and they've paid a lot of money for it. But I think it helps them with their confidence that even though like they're probably not going to get companies coming to them asking for investment from Google search, them walking into a meeting and maybe a lot of people are trying to invest in this company will help the perception they're offering that they are a leader, they are the best VC, and that if the other VCs are trying to pay money, you know, maybe having the better domain will make you look better as well, right? So,
well, we've had some of the domains where we've had inbound leads where people are like, hey, I want to purchase, you know, cream.com, but I want, you know, I don't want to pay anything. I just want to make it so when I present it to the VCs that they see that I own the .com, or I want to pitch it to get more funding, and then I can do it. And that's also, it kind of just shows like when these companies are going to get funding, as much as we want to say it doesn't seem to matter having your brand match domain, when you're getting to that level, it does make a difference in the view.
Yeah. All right. You said, all right, so let's think of another one.
Okay, sorry.
I'm going to hand register a domain, or I'm going to go spend a couple $100 on a domain, and I'm just going to SEO the shit out of it. What would be your response? Or someone who says, I could just buy that keyword in another extension, and I'll just do a bunch of SEO, and I'll own that keyword in like 6 months. We don't need to buy this name.
Well, I always go, like my brain always goes back to the algorithm of Google, because I remember when Penguin came out, and I don't know why that has always stuck in my head, but it was this huge deal for a lot of people that you couldn't see it when it was on, it had the mobile app. If you weren't mobile, your SEO just dropped. So I really bring that into people, like saying, hey, look, algorithms do change, and you're going to have to constantly maintain that SEO. SEO is definitely needed. I am not saying by any means you don't need SEO, but it's like when you have a company that's a brick or mortar, you have a good location, which is what your domain name is. You know, you have what people remember, where they remember to go to. And then SEO is kind of in that sense that advertising where, you know, someone's searching or someone's walking down the street, they see it and they're like, oh, I really want to go to that. And then they remember where they need to go back to. So one is, I always talk about the SEO, the Google algorithm always changing. The other is with the SEO, you know, age does make a difference. And if you hand register a domain, Google is not trusting of it. They think that it could be spammy. And so after a certain amount of age, they realize that one, that it's not, but it also helps the SEO to have that kind of age behind the domain. And then also people, they really don't, I don't think they think about like the costs of what constant SEO is compared to also owning your brand. So, you're going to be paying, I don't know, thousands at least if you're going to be SEOing the hell out of something to just have it be the ranking, compared to where if you actually have your brand and that's what people are remembering, you can do it a little more, not as much and not as constant.
Yeah.
Other thing is, if you have a competitor, an SEO, I mean, they even have more funds to be able to SEO, to pay for all of the ads and be able to beat you on those keywords, where what good does it do? You're now just in a competitive nature with another competitor, and they might have more rev and more backing to be able to do that, and you're just gonna boom, 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 and not nice.
I agree. I think you need to have a balanced attack, and I would probably agree with the buyer in saying that SEO is an integral part of any online business these days. I would also say, though, that people are becoming a lot more savvy, and that I think people will judge a business based on certain criteria. I think the domain name itself is one of the things that someone glances at in the search results, and Google brought it back. It was gone for a little while, but now they show the link again, number one.
Yes.
The other thing is obviously reviews, and then obviously how your site looks, right? So if someone visits your website and it's a crappy domain and it's a crappy website, or it loads slow, or other criteria, you're going to have a problem. And the other thing I think...
Brand, sorry, I know I'm interrupting you, but brand is still, I mean, it just sounds ridiculous, but I mean, all I keep saying, and I think it's now I've noticed brand, because back when we started, everyone needed keyword specific domains. That was what it was all about. So if you were a shoe company, you wanted shoes.com. That was what it was, because people were just typing in, I want shoes, so I'm going to go to shoes.com. Now it is completely different, and everything's a brand. They're like, what is the brand? What is the company's brand? And that's how people are remembering. So if you don't have your brand, how memorable are you to these people then?
Or your brand is just bad in general. Then you got a problem,
which can happen.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's all a mixture. And I think another thing that certain people who've said these things don't understand, they don't understand two other things, right? Is that when you do SEO, or SEO the shit out of something, which we've heard many times, SEOing the shit out of something involves building a website that meets the criteria of Google. It has to do with speed and the way you've linked your site to itself, and then submitted it to Google Postmaster tools, and making everything perfect in that way. You have to write content that people actually link to yourself, right? So it has to be something that looks good, is about subjects that people want to read about, and that third parties like other businesses want to link to your articles, or you got to pay for them. So how much is your time worth, business owner, to pay someone to write articles that are good, people want to read, and others want to link to, and make sure your website is balanced in that way, and you're going to pay somebody to manage that as an SEO person? And then the flip side of it all really is, if you're probably not going to get a lot of links, because it takes a really long time to get people to notice your articles, to read them, and then to link to them. You're going to have to pay for links to get people to do that, which gets extremely expensive.
And then there's even more. So there's even a more out of pocket. I mean, it's just,
even more. So
even more.
And if you have a bad domain that just got registered that has a bad rating as well, I mean, it's going to be a very hard thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of companies and people that have done it. They've climbed the mountain. But I think it's a tough go, and I know it for myself, trying to compete with different keywords in the domain business that we think are the most important ones that we need to rank for. All right, here's another one. This is one of my favorites, especially on the lower value domains that are, a couple of $1,000, and sometimes it could be the multi-million-dollar one. But I always chuckle at this one. my board, it's either my board did not approve or will not approve a price over a certain amount, or they won't approve a higher offer, or the offer I made, we have to go in another direction. What is your answer when someone tells you that?
I always think of, so one is you always, like, no matter what, you'll always be like, well, let me, when is the next board meeting? Let me get on the call with your board and you'll discuss. But it's almost a joking manner because we all know that no way in hell are they ever going to let us go in a board decision. So what I also, what I do try and do when they say the board isn't approved is ask and try and understand, okay, understandable. One, what was the funding that you had allocated to this domain name? Because again, it's just trying to understand what level they're at. And then once they're kind of talking about it and saying, okay, well, when is the next kind of period that your board's going to be meeting to have a discussion on needing to possibly raise the budget, or if there's interest in possibly trying to do payments over time. Some sellers are willing to take equity into a company, just kind of give alternatives. But the board, whenever I hear this, I'm always like, oh, you mean your wife, or there's always, or their partner, when they have to go talk to their partner. It's like, okay, well, let's get everyone on a call then, because let's make it where everyone's on the same page. And I've actually had that be successful. When it's a board, it's much more along the lines of, okay, what is this domain worth really to your company? What is kind of the funding that your company is going to have? Even though we can have an idea because we look on Crunchbase and we kind of see when the company got funding. So it's also kind of entertaining when you get that response and you see that a company just received $100 million worth of funding and they're hemming and hawing over a $30,000 domain or something. So again, just asking, I know it sounds weird, I don't do more objections, but asking questions to really open more and engage and understand what it is that's the hiccup. Because sometimes it's, okay, I just don't have it. Great, let's do a payment over time. What can you do? But if it's, again, a large organization that has a board, it's where's your company seeing the value then? What is it that your company is needing to have it be at a higher level? What are you guys needing?
And I also think at the end of the conversation, if they say the board won't approve the price of, the counteroffer of this domain, the reality is there's still a need.
Yes, they still need it, and they're still going to show interest.
Or maybe it's not that one. Maybe the seller that you're working with or working for has something similar. Maybe they have the plural. They have the ED one as well, or the .net. That'd be more in their budget, right? I find it a lot of the times laughable when people say my board and the domain is a $2,000 or $3,000 domain, because in order to have a board and get that board to have a meeting, usually would cost the company a couple $1,000s in their time, or if you actually do it in person, to fly everybody out somewhere, put them in a hotel. Hemming and hawing about a $2,000 or $3,000 domain is comical as well, and but
I think when you really do have it where it's an actual board, it's a real board.
But then you come across a lot of fake boards. That's what I'm trying to point out. Right?
A lot of fake boards. But but those are always the delicate ones, because I feel like that's when you start throwing out a payment plan. Or you show that, okay, maybe it's out of line with their budget or where their ideal price would be, but you kind of get them to have knowledge within the industry, show them some sales that have taken place. Again, I can't stress the amount of times where I'm like, well, what if we do payments over time for a few years? And they're like, you can do that? And it's like, yeah. So how can we make that work for you when it's one of the lower tiered boards? The big boards, it's just like, all right, when's your next funding and when can I talk to someone? I have to laugh because when I did the sale for Ollie, when I did the acquisition of Ollie.com, I had reached out to the owners of Ollie.com. I had reached out to the CEO. I had the gatekeeper tell me there's no way we're going to sell this domain, not in a million years. There was a whole reason. And it was actually me getting in touch with a board member that I somehow was able to get a hold of and have a conversation. And he was like, oh no, we'll sell the domain for that. But it's just kind of funny on the switch of where, you can it seems that the boards are willing to speak to you when you're trying to purchase their domains, but they magically don't when you're trying to purchase a domain for them. So,
yeah,
just kind of
it's
interesting.
Yeah, I sometimes think also at the same time, by the time somebody comes back with, the board said no, hard to recover from that, because usually if it's no, it's like kind of already in the books, and it also kind of applies when you approach a company, a large company, and you make a bad offer to start, and they just come back and say, nope, we're not going to sell it, it's not for sale. Well, the reason is you probably made a bad offer. If you made a really bad offer to start, and then they bring it up to the group once, they're not going to keep bringing it up. Like you can't, you can only try so many times, especially with a hierarchical business that is more in the traditional sense, where getting a true board together, especially if they're publicly traded, is a challenge, and they only do that a certain number of times a year. To get it on the docket, to be worth being talked about, to be discussed, a lot.
Oh yeah.
And then for them to say no, and then somehow resurrecting that from the ashes is a lot. It's a hard one to come by, right? And so, kind of feel sometimes when you find that out, and then if you say to them, we could do a payment plan, it's kind of like, fuck, I should have told them that before, the meeting, and kind of gone over these options. So hopefully they knew that they could have done that and not have to wait like 3 more months for the next board meeting for them to ask, and at that point, like sometimes the urge to buy might be gone for the buyer, or the excitement of the opportunity.
Well, and that's why I'm always about finding information. Like, I think the biggest thing in the domain industry is trying to get as much information from the buyer or seller, but mainly the buyer, as possible. Understand them, know what they're coming from, know why this is of interest, whether you're representing the seller or whether you're representing the buyer. Knowing that information can give you a game plan on how you're going to handle the next steps, because that's what makes a difference in being able to get a deal done. I mean, it doesn't, behoove you to talk to a buyer that has a budget of $5,000 again for a $100,000 domain and will never be able to get there, and try and reach out to a seller. But if you're able to kind of understand where they are from the get-go, you can kind of control, again, the narrative of where they're going to go, and make it where you actually can get a deal done, even if it didn't align on that one particular domain.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, here comes one out of left field. What was the first, look on your face. What was the first domain name you ever sold?
Grant Pass, Oregon. $5,000.
Grant.
I think it's still up. Grant, Grant, Pass, Pass, Oregon, or EGON.com.
That's a long one.
I think that was the first one. I mean, I know it's the first one. I think it's still up.
That was 15 letters. That's a long one for $5,000. That's pretty good. Is it up? Are you looking? No, you're not looking at it? All right, here's
I haven't looked.
The first domain I ever sold was... Oh, let me look. The first domain name I ever sold was workzilla.com, and it... let's see. Oregon.
Grant Pass. It's either Grant or
it's
Grant.
For sale. Someone must have let it expire.
Go do the plural. Do the plural and see. Let's see if it's the plural. Nope, she let it expire.
Oh,
so yeah,
no.
it's up for
no,
sale.
There's a 404. There's a 404 not found for Grants plural Pass, Oregon.
Oh. Yeah, she let it expire. It's at GoDaddy.
Orcazilla, performers for any task. Look at this. Find an artist. I'd have to do an interview with this guy. I might send him a message and have him on the podcast to go over my first domain sale. It wasn't to them, it was to a domain investor. All right,
that
and
one
then
makes me sad though. She was such a nice little. I mean, she was an older woman, but it was an information, because I've actually checked on it a few different times, so this is new that it's down. But it was an information portal for all the businesses in Grant Pass, Oregon. That's literally what it was.
There you go. What is the weirdest domain name or the strangest domain name you've ever sold? I remember two specifically that are actually kind of interesting.
I know one for sure. Huh?
Which one? What's the one for sure that you're thinking of?
Ponyplay.com.
Well, Ponyplay, you loved that one. That was a good one.
That
we learned
one
a lot
cracks me up.
Doing research with Ponyplay. Didn't know what it was, and when I looked it up, that was.
Don't look it up.
Yeah, don't look it up. I remember you sold H.
Yes.
You sold and with less H's to Coca-Cola. Those are two,
yes.
And you sold them for a lot of money. They were like $30K each or $20K each.
It was a lot, and I think the one actually still. I think it was A with 16 H's after it.
No,
and it
one,
was
two,
it was a lot. It went forever.
That one doesn't
It was
resolve.
insane.
1,
Try
2, 3,
12, 14.
6,
It was
7, 8,
crazy.
15, 11, 12. Yeah. I remember it ran in a Coca-Cola ad campaign for a while. I saw it on TV.
It was on an ad. They had, I think it was Domino's. It was Domino's and Coca-Cola that had like this ad for it together. That was
really?
a weird one.
There you go.
Ponyplay just sticks with me because that one was just the most obscure. If you're
it was
thinking
bizarre,
of weird things in the
cool
domain industry.
Yeah. I remember when you sold it though, and then like I'd say a month or so later I saw it on a TV ad and I was like, whoa, look at that. That was pretty cool.
But it's really weird because you wouldn't think that they would choose that to be on the ad. I mean, just because it was so long. It was just such a long domain name. That was a weird one. That was weird. I'm trying to think what else.
So I've seen two of your names on ads on TV. So I've seen that, well, three. The two various spellings of I don't know which ones they use, but I saw that. So I should count that as one. And then the other, I saw Ollie.com being advertised on TV quite a bit. And then the one of the domains that I've sold that I've seen ads on TV for quite a bit is MLife, which is the MGM Grand their awards program. I got them that domain.
Oh, no kidding.
Many moons ago, yeah. I don't know if they've changed the name of it since, but I helped them get that, and I helped them get sands.com, like the Sands Casino. Yeah, so if you go to mlife.com, it goes to MGM Resorts, MGM Rewards. I was them to get that, and I acquired sands.com for them.
So then I have a question for you. Rather than rather than sex.com, what was the one domain when you sold it you're like, or acquired it? What's the one that you're just like, that you can talk about? Because I know half the time we can't even talk about the domains we sell, but what's one that you're like, hell yeah? Doesn't have to be about cost either. Ooh, did I stub ya?
I think one of my more fun ones that I was ever part of that I really liked and it happened is that I did a deal for Yahoo. We did two deals for Yahoo, but the one that I was most proud of at the time, and this goes back to like my CETO days, is that they wanted me to acquire meme.com. So Meme, right? Meme or memes or whatever you call them. So at the time, if you go back onto the archive.org and you look, there was a website that looked like it was abandoned called Meme Factory on it. And I emailed this guy, I called this guy, we offered to this guy like lots of money. And the guy's like, I don't want to sell it, I don't want to sell it, I don't want to sell it, I don't want to sell it. I get on the phone with Yahoo. There's like a few, there's their lawyer and there's someone who's the head of that project that they're coming out with. And then at the time, they were also, I just outbound sold OMG.com to them because they just launched a competitor to TMZ. I sold them OMG.com. So after I sold them OMG.com, which they were using, they asked me to get them Mimi.com. So I'm trying to get Mimi. This guy is being a real prick about it. Like, he's not being nice. Like, I talked to him on the phone. He's just rude about it. I'm saying, like, is there an offer? Can you give us an idea? Make him an offer. He's just kind of like rude about it. And he's not getting back to me. And then on the call, the .me domain extension was just coming out, or it was already out, but it was like kind of getting some popularity. So I said, instead of using Mimi.com, why don't you use me.me? And you hear the people in the call. There was a group of people on the call from Yahoo going like, and then they're like, we'll call you back. So then they call back and they said, why don't you try to get it? And I said, well, there's a problem with that. The name's registry reserved and it's owned by the Montenegrin government. And so I happen to know the representative there. Her name is escaping me, but she still works. She still works there. And she's a really nice woman. Oh, God, I can't remember her name. But I called her up and I told her, I was like, look, Yahoo wants this domain. I pitched it to them. So she got back to me and she said, we have to go in front of the Montenegrin government with a proposal that me.me was going to be used by Yahoo and what the purpose was and what they were trying to do. I said, look, I know governments move slow. Like, we can't wait 5 years for you guys to get back to us. Like, we need to know soon. And she got it approved within like 2 or 3 weeks. And they had the name and it was ready to go. And then Yahoo used it for a period of time. But when you visit the name, I think it's gone. That's gone now. I don't know if the name went back to the .me registry, what the contract was. I think if Yahoo wasn't using it, they had to give the name back. Used it for a few years and then they sunsetted that project. But I think that was probably one of my more exciting ones. And I really like when it was done, it's like the government gave it to Yahoo. And then the conversation with them was like, so what are we supposed to do here? Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'd like to get paid. So then I just said, but there wasn't a sale. Like, it was like, here's a free name. So it's like, I don't want a Coke and a smile. I wanted, I named a product. I found them the domain. I helped make it happen. And so what we did is we made an agreement, and Yahoo was really generous about it. We did an appraisal of the domain and whatever number we came up with, and they paid us a commission based on that amount of money that we came up with. And we agreed. Everyone was fine with it, and then paid as well. So I think that was one of the better ones. I'm sure after this show ends and I go and think about it, there'll be some other stories that are interesting, but that's the one that kind of came to pass. All right, so how can people reach you, Broker Brooke, in the industry if they want to talk to you or ask for your help in acquiring or selling any of their names, or for you to help them with their portfolios?
My email is the best, brooke@saw.com, but I'm also on other social medias. LinkedIn, I gotta say, I love the LinkedIn. Please, if you reach out on LinkedIn, that is way better than Twitter, which is the Broker Brooke on my Twitter, but I just really prefer LinkedIn. It's just able to keep it all there.
Right, and is there anything else that you would like to share with everybody before we wrap this baby up?
There's nothing that's coming to mind, but yeah, just, no, I can't think of anything. This is why in podcasts, when it's like the log on and sign off, I'm always like,
I don't think you've ever been at a loss for words in the 13 years that I've known you. So this is actually a defining moment. I love it.
I know. I would say the domain industry, after all these years of being in it, the one thing that I think has kept me in the domain industry is that it is ever changing and always evolving into something. We've gone through the years where it was exact match domains, where then we were at Uniregistry and alternative extensions. We have, Web3 and NFTs and all different kinds of things. So I just look forward to kind of seeing what's coming ahead, because it always seems to be something new. And also I am very excited about our, seller platform. I got to say, like, I'm excited to also have that come out and work with some people. I have some great clients that they're excited because they are kind of biting at the bit to change things up on their side and wanting to kind of go in a different direction for themselves. So I just think I think it's an interesting period together in the domain industry.
I
Good
agree.
time.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I also have to say that some of the, being in the domain industry, monetarily, it's been good to both of us, obviously. I also think that as for, in general, I've made some of the best friends I have in my life in the industry as well, right? And I think that has definitely kept it that way. And
that is, I mean, I don't know who knew that. I mean, if you would have asked me, I don't know, however many years ago now, because we'll just, say 10 plus years. I really am kind of curious now on the exact figure, but by meeting you, would never have assumed that I would have become friends with you and your family, and our sons actually liking to out.
I know, right? Our son's hanging out at the beach, surfing lessons together, Disney World together, fun stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's also one of the big things about the domain industry is, as much and as far apart or different as anyone can be, there's a lot of good people in the industry and a lot of good friends have been made. So
yeah, and I think people outside the industry don't realize how close a lot of us are. Like, I'm friends with a lot of our competitors. Right? I talk to different brokerages and brokers on a regular basis, joke with them. Sometimes we co-broker deals. Some brokers send us business when they're on vacation, and it's just, that's the way it's been. And I think I really like that. And, that's what I love about the business too.
And I think everyone, in essence, wants everyone to be successful. That's not a common, that's not common in industries, is where everyone's like, hey, I want you to be successful. I want, that's something in the domain industry. Everyone's like, if everyone's successful, we're all successful in this industry, where, that's the thing.
I hear you.
All right, well, hey. Kumbaya.
Kumbaya is right. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and obviously your loyal service to us, and for Brooke Hernandez, everybody. Adios.
Thank you. Bye-bye.